I feel comfortable just starting.
Don't forget to turn your phones back on
After the session.
So good morning, everyone. Both here in the room and
Online, joining us for today's session on responsible AI in science,
part of the accompanying program organized by SMASH. I don't know if there's anyone in the room who doesn't know what SMASH is, but just in case, for those joining us online,
SMASH is an intersectoral career development program for outstanding
postdoctoral researchers worldwide.
Its mission is to advance cutting-edge machine learning for the sciences and humanities.
It brings together Slovenia's top 5 academic institutions, along with 25 international and non-academic partners,
coordinated by the University of Nova Gorica under the leadership of Professor Gabriela Zacharias, also one of my co-chairs today.
Just so you know, today's session is open to the public
and combines 3 lightning
talks, followed by a panel discussion to explore both the promise and the challenges of artificial intelligence. We'll explore the ethical. I know you all love me when I use that word. I think most of you I've met. Social and environmental challenges, and ask whether transparent, fair, and accountable artificial intelligence can foster trust and uphold scientific integrity as autonomous systems assume greater roles. I think we could all agree that AI is transforming science and society, ethics and morality before our eyes. It's driving breakthroughs in biology and medicine. It's helping to control fusion reactors that may one day provide zero carbon energy. It's reshaping work and creativity. I think we know it can be used in countless ways, and the ethical headings it raises are countless too. The speed of progress is outpacing our ability to keep up, and there is growing tension between innovation and ethics. With every leap forward, new risks emerge. Misuse, bias, exploitation, environmental costs, unintended consequences, systems behaving in ways we don't fully understand. It raises serious questions about governance, equity, and sustainability. AI is, as you know, resource hungry and carbon intensive,
consuming vast amounts of electricity and water. It disrupts jobs and reshapes societies,
even its own industry.
And it introduces new dangers. Rogue actors weaponizing artificial intelligence,
disinformation campaigns. There are scary scenarios shaping up
with killer robots,
autonomous weapons, and robotic warfare, as depicted in the film, do you know it? Slaughterbots.
Good. Once thought to be science fiction,
becoming real policy concerns. The public is uneasy, and there is considerable confusion on its implications. Public opinion reflects this.
Scientific studies show Australians and Britons, for example,
rank AI risks alongside pandemics and nuclear war. These disruptions have sparked significant resistance.
Probably remember in 2023,
for example, labor unions for screenwriters and actors
initiated strikes that brought Hollywood productions
to a halt. I think we're still suffering the consequence. The public message, I think, in my view, is clear. People want stronger action from governments to ensure artificial intelligence develops safely,
seeing preventing catastrophic AI risks a global priority.
But herein lies the problem. They do not yet trust those governments to deliver. The tension and dilemma are this: regulates too little, and we risk runaway artificial intelligence. Regulates too much, and we may stifle innovation. At stake is nothing less than whether AI becomes humanity's greatest tool or its last mistake. And that's why we are here today, to explore together how we can shape AI for the benefit of science, society, and environment. We'll begin with 3 expert talks, followed by a panel discussion. And our first speaker is my co-chair, up in Manchester, a rival university to my own, Professor Caterina De Leoni, who will address the fair and environmental sustainability aspects of artificial intelligence. Following her, Dr. Sebastian Scher from the University of Graz will talk on establishing and evaluating trustworthy AI. And the last insight on the regulation of AI will be by State Secretary at the Slovene Ministry of Digital Transformation, Dr. Aida Kamišalić Latifić. After each talk, I'll take about 1 minute for urgent clarifications or bursting intervention. So if you really need it. Then we'll move on to our panel discussion, where I will finally field questions from you. Aniana Javnik, it's a pleasure to kick off the session. Let's get the conversation started. Katerina, the screen and the room is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
And I'm hoping you can see my slides now.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
I will not be able to see the room very clearly or the questions on the chat, so bear with me, and I will try to be quick, and then we have a good conversation afterwards. So I'm going to full screen. All right, so you were promised a talk on fair and environmental sustainable AI, but then I decided to go a little bit deeper on one of the two topics, and mostly just trying to set the scene of saying what sustainable means in the sense of what is sustainability. There's a lot of definition here, and a lot of this discussion started in the software realm. So we start with the two sides of sustainability that can be identified for software and AI. So if you're talking about sustainable software, this is a definition by one of the sustainable software fathers, somehow Dan Katz. It's software that will continue to be available in the future on new platform meeting new needs. So you can already see the two aspects, thinking about reproducibility, sharing, and reuse. So fair software and AI. And fair, these are the FAIR principles. You might have heard about them for data, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And now something similar is developing or has been developed for software as well. And there is also a connection between software and AI, but there's more specific things that one should do for AI. So that's a fair aspect. And then there's the environmental and climate impacts of AI that were already outlined by Jana. And we're talking about green software, green AI here. Now, I will focus on the second topic today, and I will point you to the Research Data Alliance Interest Group on FAIR for AI if you want to know more about FAIR, just because I wanted to go a bit more in depth on one topic in the flash talk that we have. So this is a summary of why one wants to make AI green or want to think about green AI. The energetic impact of rise of AI is also rising. This is an image that shows the projected power growth for frontier AI training. And we're talking about megawatts in power on the y-axis, and on the x-axis is the year. So you see that things are growing, and these are where approximately the various models, the large language models, are sitting on this curve. And the forecast, it has larger bars. There's other people that are more optimistic in the sense that it's not going to grow as much. There's people who are optimistic in the sense that they will grow more because we will get better models, bigger models. But in this sense, this is from the 2018 to the 2030. We have a really, really large increase. And it looks like the needs are going up by 2 times a year. So why is that happening? So if we're looking at a point more or less in the middle of that, so this is something that from 2022. So it's not yet the very large models that we have now. It's a large language model that is hosted in Hugging Face. It's 175 billion parameters. And here's the numbers that you get. This is a paper that has 9 methodologies as well. So if you train it for about 120 days, use a lot of GPU hours, use a lot of energy, use the carbon intensity is how much carbon you're producing. This is something that is country-dependent. We'll see it later. You multiply that carbon intensity by the total number of hours, and then you include the data center operations. This is a number called the PUE. That also includes all the infrastructure to run the data center, not just the computers that you use for running your training. You include the inference, and you get 30 tons of CO2 in total. So what does it mean, this? Well, you can, if you really like home barbecues, then you'd need to use 1,250 propane cylinders. And one thing that I wanted to say with this kind of awkward comparison is that it's difficult to make sensible comparisons of what AI uses in terms of carbon footprint. So what do you compare it with? Flights, cars? If it's something that gives humanity benefits, do you really want to say it's like running a private jet to go around the world for fun. It's not. So this is just to get the idea. So this is a number that you can get out of running AI that gives you a bit of a benchmark. Don't use home barbecues as a metric, though. There's better things. So why should we care about environmental sustainable AI in the sciences? In general, incentives exist for the scientists already, because fewer resources needed to run software AI means faster results. I want results as soon as possible. That's something that everyone wants. If your training was perfect, it gave you a very, very good result or very good performance, and it took one day, you do that. The other thing is that a lot of our sciences and also society, we want a very, very quick time to insight. So we're running on a time or latency constrained environment. This is something that I do in my work. I need to select the data that I want to keep in milliseconds. So this is something that I can't just take all the time in the world to do my inference. I need to do it quickly. There's also a point of we all want our AI papers to be presented in EURIPS, and this is starting to be one of the criteria. So the experiments compute resources. So does the papers provide sufficient information on compute resources, and how many hours in CPU or GPU hours you're using? So this is something that is starting to bubble up. There's also consequences of global warming. This is a slide that I've lifted from a meeting from a British colleague. Why care about sustainability in computing? Because climate change is real. We have the Paris Agreement. Everyone wants to go to net zero. So how do we do that? And this is another definition of sustainability. It's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So what can we do for that? We know that AI4Science is not a major actor, not in terms of the conference, in terms of what we do. Then of course there's commercial models that are consuming a lot more than we do, but a mindset change in general is required. That's what a lot of us working on this advocate. So where do we start from our side? So another connection is that responsible AI, this is not quite trustworthy AI, we'll see that in the next talk, but responsible AI also includes green AI. And there's policy examples that are starting to pop up. One is the Green Software Foundation. There's that informs policy. There's specifications for a general framework for frugal AI that is in France. OECD is starting to think about how to measure environmental impacts of AI, so that the world is thinking about that. There's also an awareness of risks. So this is a net zero scoping report from one of the funding agencies in the UK. There is tension between competing objectives. So you don't want to say AI is consuming a lot of resources, so let's stop doing AI. Or let's put funding or moral caps on resource-consuming AI for sciences. So the goal here, or what I'm trying to convey, is that we want to measure and be ready to only consume what we need. This is also going to be useful in case of resource shortages. We've seen an energy crisis a year ago. We might see funding shortages. We might see compute shortages. So it's good to be mindful of the resources that we are consuming. So these are some thoughts about environmentally sustainable AI that are coming from discussions and thoughts on software as well, and computing in general. So they're not specific to AI, although towards the end we'll see a little bit of that. So the first thing that I would suggest is to move from energy to resource awareness. We always talk about the energy that a model takes, but there's a lot more consequences to the environment and to also the social justice of the environment where data centers are built. That's a different kind of conversation. I'm not covering that, but it can be interesting to talk about it later. But still, it's not just energy. It's not just electricity. It's energy and materials going to components manufacture, transport, assembly, compute hardware. The energy consumption is maybe a small part, maybe a big part. It depends on how green your electrical grid is. And then you have to dispose of all the equipment that you use for AI. So as long as you define your system boundaries of what the box contains, then you have methods that are called lifecycle assessment to understand what the impact on the resources is. You can translate that into CO2, but you can also translate it into particulate matter. You can translate it into how bad it is for the oceans, or all kinds of indicators that have to do with climate in general, not just with global warming. So how do we start thinking about reducing the resource consumption? There's three general principles from the Green Software Foundation, and this have to do with the life cycle, but what we can do sometimes is only work on our software, make our software more efficient. So we start with energy efficiency. we want to consume the least amount of electricity possible. There's also hardware efficiency, and with a lot of new hardware architectures coming up, I'm not talking just about the GPUs. There's a lot of experimentation in the compute hardware side. Hardware efficiency becomes a very important thing. So use the least amount of embodied carbon possible and try to make the architecture, to choose the architecture that is best for your AI. And carbon awareness is the other principle. Sometimes we don't have anything, like we can't choose where we run, but when we can, we could do more when the electricity is clean and less when it's dirty. So I'm going to start with that because location matters. And yesterday I went and looked at this is the electricity maps. It gathers all the information about the electricity consumption and where it's coming from. And I was looking at Slovenia, and at 9 a.m. The carbon intensity is not, so the multiplication factor that tells you from your kilowatt hour to the CO2 is high because it's mostly non-renewable sources. But then you go to 7 p.m. and then you get a lot of wind. That was, well, not actually a lot of hydroelectric power. Wind was another day. So it really, this changes depending on what you're doing, where you're doing it. And sometimes you can't choose, but when you can choose, you could choose to use data centers that are more, that use greener energy. So this is just an example that I'm giving you. I'm not showing a lot of plots here, but this is just to show the potential impact of hardware efficiency on your emissions. So this is an analysis of a high-performance computing cluster in Sweden. You replaced most of the equipment after 10 years. You expand the computing center, and Sweden is somehow privileged in terms of weather. It doesn't get very hot, so there's an inner cooling that you can use in the north of Sweden. That is, it's not very hot outside, but still, it's not the only factor. So the energy from use, the cumulative emissions from use, are close to the embodied one from the hardware, but then at some point when you replace the equipment, then the ones from use don't grow as much as the embodied. So what you do with hardware, how you replace it, how often you replace it makes a difference. And then the other point that I wanted to make is that common software and libraries matter. And many of our code bases, including AI, rely on common software and libraries. So if you can make even a moderate change in the common libraries and everyone uses it, that is important. That makes a big difference. So it's not just our own AI algorithm, it's what we use to run them, what we use to do training, what we use to do inference. So developing and properly supporting common software can have a large impact. And this is also connected to the fair aspect of things, overall sustainability of software in science. And this is particularly true for open source software. It's not that open source software is free. It comes with the cost of resources, especially human resources. So people have to develop that properly. And there was a recent OECD workshop in access to research software where that was discussed. An example that I wanted to give, because I'm familiar with it, is that there's at CERN, it's a bit domain specific, but there's people working on the optimization of software and input-out for hybrid architectures. A lot of the time, you don't run your machine learning algorithm just on a GPU because you need to put the output somewhere, you need to do some downstream analysis. That is resource intensive. Sometimes more than the machine learning model itself. So if you smooth things out and you get things running all on one chain, you make it possible to run in one chain or in a more streamlined way, then at that point you save energy as well. So what do we do to start tomorrow? So for a mindset change, we want to start measuring. We're scientists after all. So there's a lot of things that one can use, a lot of tools that you can just touch to your machine learning algorithm. Some of them are Python, some of them are online calculators. Those are the easiest ones. And I would like to point out this one is the Green Algorithms Calculator that has an AI view, and it's been tested as very good methodologies underneath where you can separate training and inference. And you can understand what your carbon consumption is. Now, absolute numbers, as I said before, you can compare it with how many barbecues you want to do, but maybe they're not as useful as the delta between before optimization and after optimization, thinking about the environmental cost. So I think this is the kind of thing that I would suggest people doing. So think about how much it takes, how much carbon you use, and how much carbon you could save, and be motivated to make this kind of changes. There's also another thing that is that we also like doing, because we're scientists, we like symmetry. So there's green AI patterns. these are things that people will be doing anyway. Just thinking about them in the sense of how much CO2 can I save can give an additional motivation to do them. So for example, optimize the size of models. Don't use huge models if you don't need to. Use efficient file formats. Select more energy efficient underlying framework. Select the right hardware. So not all of them are usable and feasible for everyone. Some of them need quite a bit of expertise, but it's a start. So looking at this, this website tells you where you can save in terms of carbon impact. And so finally, I wanted to leave you with a couple of words on UKIVE. This is an initiative that is in fundamental physics and astrophysics and nuclear physics, and where Gabi and I chair the FAR and Environmentally Sustainable Machine Learning Group. So this is UKIVE is a framework within particle nuclear physics where we coordinate and discuss activities in AI and fundamental physics. You can see the website of what we're doing. There's a number of working groups, and this is the working group 3, FAIR Environmentally Sustainable Machine Learning. And as part of one of the strategy processes for where to go next in our field, when we produce this white paper on AI infrastructure, and I wanted to just give you the recommendations that we have. That the first thing we want to do is investigate and adopt benchmarks that are suitable for raising awareness of the environmental impact of large AI models. It's great to talk about ChatGPT, but maybe it's not familiar. I'm not training ChatGPT, am I? I'm training my own thing. So what is my own thing? What is representative there? The other thing is considering collective mitigation strategies, so optimizing the frameworks and models and interfaces to software frameworks on top of doing things individually. It's also about thinking about what kind of performance loss we can take in order to make a gain in the environmental impact. And then finally, cooperate with infrastructure and computing sites to minimize carbon cost of computing-intensive AI tasks will also make a difference because we're not running on our laptops all the time. We're running on big computing centers. So working with them and making sure that we have transparency there and the best possible hardware choices, then that's another thing that we can do. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm taking a couple of questions if you'd like, or I'm very eager to hear the other talk, so we can also leave the questions for later. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katerina. Are there any bursting questions or interventions, any clarifications needed at this point? Don't be shy. No, Katerina, then we'll just go with the flow, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions afterwards. Katerina, thanks a lot. And
thank you.
Any questions from Zoom? No. No? No. Okay. So Sebastian Scher from the University of Bath, the floor is yours. Are you too far?
That's the problem with the error is seem promising. There we go. Okay, perfect. I will give a very brief talk on establishing and evaluating trustworthy AI. And I think for this, it's important to know where this work comes from. So I did this with a lot of colleagues from the Knowles Center, and this is a applied research institute. And we did this work together also with SGS, which is a testing company, and it's maybe a word that is not so familiar to most of you, and was also not familiar to me. But this is where this comes from, and I think it's very important to understand it. So every time I talk about AI or AI application, I have a bit like practical things in mind. So it's
They're here.
Okay, I will try to talk also a bit. Okay, that's maybe an even easier solution. So I'm more talking about like practical AI applications and not so much as a tool in science, which of course is the main purpose of this conference. But I added in some reflections in the end to also kind of bridge the gap to using AI for science. And of course, as we all know, AI. Okay. Let's do this. Okay, that's good. Just tell me where to stand. We'll shut it off.
The most
Let's continue talking. Good. So as we all know, AI reshapes modern life across many domains, and this is just stuff like picked out here because I will try to use them as reference. There's healthcare, finance. There's also entertainment, maybe not so risky, but it's used a lot. So all the recommendations you get on YouTube or Netflix, there's of course all kinds of AI systems behind this nowadays. But there are also a lot of risks, like for example, bias and discrimination. There are privacy issues, personal data. There can be accidents, for example, with self-driving cars or factory floors. And therefore, there are kind of a growing demand for what we now, for the purpose of this talk, called trustworthy AI. And there's this word trust in it, which is a bit a vague word, but I want to use it also kind of on purpose in this vague way. Then there is by now also regulatory frameworks coming up. We will hear more about this also in the next talk. And maybe the main overarching framework is the EU AI Act that kind of attempts to regulate AI and particularly AI applications. And then what we did kind of in this study, we made a literature review, and then we identified 6 key requirements of trustworthy AI. And this is not what we came up with, but this is in the literature. So this is all kind of an overview. And also to make it clear, if I talk about AI, this is like a very broad definition here. I wrote down it's essentially any data-driven application, but and I realized it's also not true. It's even broader. So this can also be a bit more like old-fashioned symbolic AI approaches, but it's very wide. And I'm very specifically not thinking about large language models or these kind of things only, which nowadays in public discussion are the main association of AI, but it's essentially anything that is data-driven. So it's also statistical models actually. And the question is, what does it mean to trust an AI application? And now there are 6 requirements. First, I ordered them just in our paper and plan to tell you that the order is random and it's not significant. But then I reconsidered and I purposefully ordered them in this way. So we start from robustness and accuracy. Then we have privacy and security. We have transparency and explainability, fairness and non-discrimination, human agency and oversight, and in the end, accountability. But this order does not have anything to do with importance, but it has to do with how maybe from a technical side or from a computer science point of side, we are comfortable with these topics. And I base this like on my own kind of judgment. And it does very explicitly it's not important. But I will kind of go through them in this way and put there a couple of words to all of them. And then in the discussion afterward, we can also dive deeper in them. Can you just tell me what time I started so I get a feeling for the time?
26 past.
Okay, perfect. So we start with robustness and accuracy, and this is maybe for the more technical people in this room will be a bit a topic where I think, why do we need to mention it at all? Because it's of course clear that this is relevant, but it's still very important to talk about it explicitly. And we defined it now a bit more like explicit languages. It's sustaining the AI model's performance, also in unexpected circumstances. And you can split it up into the accuracy part, which essentially means that the predictions or the output of your models is correct. Of course, this depends on how you define correct, and in detail it gets a bit more complicated. But in principle, it's quite an easy problem. Just the outputs they need to be correct. And then we have robustness, which is related but not the same thing. And this means how good your outputs are under kind of unexpected circumstances. And maybe let's take an example of a self-driving car that has a camera and tries to see things on the road. And if it's accurate, it will identify a stop sign as a stop sign and a person as a person. And then it's accurate. And robustness means if something happens that was not considered in the development, maybe there's a problem with the camera, the lens is blurred, or there can be all kinds of things. Does it still work then? And here the essential thing is also the kind of the unexpected circumstances, what we did not consider in the training phase. In all these things, there are a lot of trade-offs, and in this particular thing, there's usually a trade-off between accuracy and robustness. So very accurate model might not be robust, and depending on your application, that might be a problem. Maybe the robustness is more important. And now there are a lot of methods for ensuring robustness and accuracy. And again, for those people who maybe already who actually work on training their own AI models, this is kind of basic thing. It's essentially what we do in data science. But still, there are a lot of challenges. So you might have an AI system that is evolving, changing over time, and it's actually not so easy to come up with a way to kind of evaluate it all the time. You can have composite system where either you have several AI systems coupled, or your AI system or model is in some much larger framework, and then it's also not so obvious what do you actually mean with accuracy. Is it the accuracy of your AI part or of some downstream application? And more and more, we have like this idea of general purpose AI system, or it's less general foundation models. And there it's also quite hard to actually tell what do we mean with accuracy and robustness, if you then again think of a concrete application. So now we come to the next topic, which I still think is from the computer science side, like a familiar thing. It's privacy and security. And here the problem definition is that we should protect personal information of users in the AI system and ensure security. And with privacy, we normally mean protecting personal data from data breaches. And then there's also security, which can be defined in many different ways. And here we went for the way that it's defending an AI from malicious attacks. So that's kind of outside the normal software framework, but there are kind of certain attacks that were developed where you can either, for example, fool an AI system by slightly tweaking your input, or you can manage to extract data that was used in the training of the system. And if this is personal data, that's a problem. And I find this a very interesting example because when I read up on this the first time, that was an extremely academic problem that has been like shown in theory. But suddenly now with the large language models that are available to the public, this actually became a real issue. And there were incidences where this actually happened. So where people managed to kind of extract personal data from an AI model that was used in the training without hacking into any system. So it's not a typical this like IT security problem, but a very AI specific one. And it's a bit a cat and mouse game, as usually everything in IT security. So there are kind of new attacks developed and then also new defenses, and this probably will continue going. And as always, it will be interesting to see who will win at the end. So the attacker or the defenders. And then we have, I think, the last topic that is still quite familiar from the technical point of view. It's transparency and explainability. Here, the problem definition would be improving the understandability of an AI system and its decision. And this is something that's like quite easy to understand, like what we mean. Like the user should understand an AI decision. But if you then go down at the technical level, it gets a bit complicated because many AI algorithms are really inherently hard to understand. And then there are two approaches to tackle this. So there's a huge field of research called explainable AI that kind of developed additional methods to explain AI models and their decisions. And there's also another approach where they say, okay, no, we don't use complex models. We try to use as simple models as possible that are inherently understandable. And it seems like from the technical point of view, okay, we can apparently solve it. But there's a big issue, which for me is like a bit a philosophical issue, that what do we actually mean with understanding? And this is, it's kind of not a well-posed question because it's a psychological thing. And if like you would ask me to kind of justify some decision I have made today, like why did I make this presentation this way? I could probably come up with a good explanation that you would accept, but there's actually research on this that kind of human decision making is much more complicated that we can actually express. So this would not be the way I actually made the decision, but it would be like a convincing one, and leaves the question that I cannot answer, but I want to kind of open it here. What do we mean if we understand the AI system? Does it mean we really understand it, or does it mean that the explanation it gives us convinces us? And that's not necessarily the same thing. And we have one, and because of this, it also depends on the user of the AI system, how they will interpret the explanation. So this is suddenly not the AI system alone anymore. It's already in the context and of how do the user see it. And then generative AI, this is again also a bit of a technical problem. It's like especially hard to explain. That's even more tricky to define what do we mean with an explanation. And then we have a very important topic, it's fairness and non-discrimination. So there have been several issues where AI systems were used in practice and where there was some kind of bias or discrimination kind of happening. And there can be many, many different examples. I want to, for the discrimination thing, maybe use the credit scoring example. So at the bank, you might want to use some automated system that judges people whether you should give them a credit or not. And then there is usually also some legal framework that says kind of you are not allowed to make this decision based on certain things. For example, it could be gender or age. And then it first seems that this is a problem that we can tackle from the technological side, because you can kind of come up with fairness definitions and then actually test whether your system kind of is fair or not. And then you can even force it to be fair. So it seems like you can solve it, but there's a very big catch that you need to define fairness. And this is much more harder than it seems, because if you would make a longer session here and talk about fairness, we would be able to come up with very intuitive ways of kind of what would be fair, for example, in the context of credit scoring. But then if we think about them harder, we will find that they will all contradict each other, even though everyone on its own seems very intuitive. And then if you try to kind of code it out and into a system, you actually need to choose a definition. And that's not a technological problem anymore. That's an ethical question and also a legal question, and one kind of very hard to make. And it also depends extremely on the context. It depends on the culture, on the legal setting, and it's not a technological problem. Oh. And then the fifth, or the one that last, is human agency and oversight. Here, what we need to do is we need to sustain the autonomy of humans affected by AI system. And this is already a language that I feel a bit uncomfortable with. So this is not really my topic. And I guess that the more technical people in the room maybe have the same. And then you can say, okay, AI should sustain human autonomy and control. Okay, what does this really mean? Let's first start with human control, because that's a bit easier. This kind of means, how do you use your AI system? Does it work on your own, or kind of do you interact with it? And then you can group it into different ways. And the most common one is that you start from human in command. This is, let's say you are, I don't know, a bank person, and you need to make some decisions, and you also use an AI system, and it gives you some information, and you use also other things. So you kind of just use it in your human decision making as a help tool, which is maybe how many people use like ChatGPT nowadays, kind of as an additional information source. Then you can go one step further. We call a human in the loop, and this is where you kind of use it regularly, but still there's always a human involved and might kind of be able to, don't have to intervene, but for each decision you need to make, you always use the same AI system, but you could kind of override it if you want. And if you don't do anything, also nothing will happen. The decision will not be used. And we can take it one step further, which would be human on the loop. This is where something is automated, but still a human is monitoring it. This would, for example, be, I don't know if you make a test drive of an automatic car. This would be the typical setting. You let it drive on your own, but the human is actually trying to check on it and can intervene if kind of they deem it necessary. And then the most autonomous one is human out of the loop, where a system is really kind of acting completely on its own. So this is something I still feel kind of reasonably confident talking about. But then we have to find one human agency. And here I did something I normally don't like to do, but I copied a whole paragraph from our paper, and how human agency is defined here. It's the very broad idea that humans as intentional actors should be in control, particularly with respect to substantial and important parts of their lives. AI systems shall not restrict this agency, whether it would be desirable that through AI systems, human agency is increased. And the reason why I copied in there is, for me, this really is like a philosophical statement that for me is hard to interpret, but I think we should at least realize that this is very important, and this is not it's not really a technical problem, and it's definitely not a computer science problem. But if you have an AI application, it's something that absolutely needs to be considered. So I think kind of the main take-home message here is that it starts to get a bit more philosophical. Maybe the people in the philosophy field would disagree and say it's a slightly other field, but this also shows it's really not kind of my field. I don't even know like the correct language to talk about it. And then finally, again, like a very different field is accountability, which of course is connected to law and legal problems. And this is about understanding who is responsible for the decision of an AI system. And in practice, this can be actually really tricky. So if you think back, okay, we have different ways how an AI system can be used, like just as an information source, it can act on its own. And in each of these settings, who is responsible when actually something gets wrong? And that's a very, very hard question to ask. And also, again, it's not really a technological question in my eyes. And there are now mechanisms developed like for oversight, for legal redress, and also ethical compliance. So there's a lot of things happening here. We'll probably hear much more on this in the next talk. And one of the very big challenges here is you have a complex AI system. This gets even more tricky. So if you have something kind of quite well defined, like a self-driving car, I mean, there are a lot of risks, but it's quite clear what do we talk about. But who is responsible if someone uses, I don't know, ChatGPT and then something happens kind of in some downstream task? It's like very hard. Good. And then there are some kind of overarching issues. And the main take-home message from this talk for me is that this is a very interdisciplinary problem. And each of these 6 requirements is like a huge topic on its own. One could kind of talk about hours about each of those points. And as I tried to point out, although already earlier, many of these topics are not really computer science or technical topics. So it starts to get also into ethics and other things. And it's something also, if you're a computer scientist or programmer developing something, you should at least realize that there are kind of much more problems that maybe are not your field to solve, and they also shouldn't be. Like, it shouldn't be loaded onto you to solve it. And there are many trade-offs between these different requirements. For example, there's usually privacy versus transparency trade-off. There can also be a fairness versus accuracy. So if you force your system to be fair with a certain definition of fairness, that might impact its accuracy, and then it's a very hard decision how to balance this. Everything I talked about today is extremely context dependent, and context means the application, but it's also the country, it's the culture. Like, context is really very broad, and every one of these aspects will depend on this. Then if you have an evolving system, that makes it especially hard for all these aspects. And what we kind of found in our research, I mean, there's a lot done on it, but if you talk about like really real world systems that are used, it's still quite open how to actually talk about it and how to ensure that they are trustworthy, kind of to get this word in the end. And finally, because this is the AI4Science conference, obviously, and not so much for like kind of applications that you use in a product that you want to sell or use as a government agency or whatever, I kind of try to think about how does this relate to each other. And this is not like research, this is just my personal opinions. And I think there are some parallels, but also difference. So in real-world applications, AI is pretty new, even though it's becoming more standard, but still it's kind of quite new, and particularly it's many sectors new to use any data-based approaches. So maybe not even kind of I would think from the science point of view. So in many science fields, data has been used for a long time, specifically in the physical sciences. So maybe the leap to AI systems is actually not so huge. And now I'm myself a physicist, and I kind of would be inclined to say this means it's kind of in physics, it's easy, but I'm actually not sure, because this also means that we might kind of oversee some things because we tend to think, we can deal with this anyway. It's just a new technique. It's just data-based. It's kind of what we have always been doing. And maybe in the humanities, I think this risk is not there. It's more the realization, okay, it's a new thing. We should really think about it. What does it actually mean for our science? And then in these real-world applications, as I showed, trustworthiness, it has kind of this many aspects, which here we grouped into these 6 groups. And if you use it as a tool in science, I think, depending a bit on the setting, maybe you don't have all this aspect because it doesn't have this complex context, but also depending, of course, a lot on your specific usage. And then there's one thing which maybe we can also discuss later. So I feel that AI, of course, it's also a marketing term. And what I learned while kind of doing kind of high research with companies is that AI sells really good. So companies want to solve some problems with AI for the sake of solving it with AI, not so much for solving the problem, just because you can sell it. And I feel a bit maybe in science it's similar, because if you find some result with AI, it tends to get a lot of public attention nowadays, simply because it was solved with AI and not because it's an interesting problem. And this also creates, of course, an incentive for researchers to solve things with AI. And I think it might also be easier to get funding if you try to tackle some problem with AI. But then science, it should always be about the science questions and not about the method to use. But at least there's actually an interesting parallel. And then one final thing I mentioned in the very beginning, that in this work we work together with kind of testing and certification companies. And this was a completely new word for me, but in applied settings, it's kind of a normal thing. So like this whole building, we kind of are reasonably confident that it will not collapse on us. And this is probably because there are rules for it, there are norms, and there are also kind of companies and people who are specialized in doing nothing else, that kind of ensuring that whoever built this actually conformed to these norms. And this is now also slowly being developed for AI systems. But at least in kind of my physical research world, this is something that is not known at all. But I think it might actually be worth to get a bit in context with it, because it's a very different way of approaching things. It's extremely boring. So if you read standard documents, it's really the most boring thing you can ever read. But it's kind of interesting to see how it is approached. And it's a very different way to think about how can you ensure that something that maybe even someone else developed actually kind of can be trusted, to use this vague word again. Good, so that was already the end of my talk. Just once again, this whole idea of trustworthy AI is like a very multi-dimensional and interdisciplinary issue that's technically human and legal aspects. And if you talk about an AI application, like of course development is important, but also the evaluation is kind of equally important, ensuring that in the end the user kind of can trust it. And if you want to read up on this more, so we have a kind of a scientific paper on this issue where we discuss these things, but also maybe even more interesting is we have 6 white papers in a bit more general language that kind of each of these discusses one of these topics, so not in kind of not in science language, but in a bit more approachable one. At least that was the intention. So good, that's already the end of my talk, and I'm very much looking forward also to the discussion afterwards.
Thank you, Sebastian. Any questions at this point? Did you raise your hand? And yes, go ahead. Will you speak up, please? No, you can have, if you have a short comment, please feel welcome to comment now at this point. But you need to speak up.
Yeah. Of AI, is it better or not? So that sometimes you have like fake implementations, like not better implementations with AI. I think in experiments like Atlas and at LHC, every time you are using AI, you have to prove that you will be better. So every time you use something new, you have to prove or like compare to the previous versions of some algorithm. And so I think at LHC it's not so much that we do this. So but maybe you can follow the same for other aspects. But you just have to kind of prove or demonstrate that this is better, or bringing something completely new. So bringing a new completely new analysis with AI is a big step. But also, if you are doing the same thing that you were doing previously without AI, you just have to know that it's going to bring some improvement.
I mean, that's good.
Sebastian, could we just summarize briefly for the audience online? So I couldn't hear it, and I'm sure they couldn't hear it. Could you briefly summarize it?
Yes, so the comment was that, if I got it correctly, specifically at like LHC experiments, which I think is experimental physics. So I'm actually a climate physicist. I was not specifically enough. that this issue kind of luckily does not seem to exist. That's kind of that AI has this, what I kind of call in vague words, this marketing component. So if you claim to solve a problem with AI, you will have to show that it's actually better than other methods that have been tried, and that's very good to hear. So I spoke implicitly here from my climate physics background, and there it happens a bit that if you kind of the first to use AI for anything, it tends to be accepted very easily. And again, I'm speaking here mainly about myself. So this is how my career started. That's what, for example, I did in my PhD. It was not much about what is the actual problem, but can we in principle use AI for it? And I'm not saying it was completely uninteresting, but it shouldn't be about AI. It should always be about the science results.
I'm sorry, we'll continue afterwards if that's okay.
In any other way, that's also. So the other aspect is you can do a new thing which you cannot do in regular classical way. So if you have a lot of parameters. Okay.
I'll invite you later on, but there was another comment. You had another comment here, right?
Okay. One of your slides, you had a sentence, AI models can be fooled on purpose.
Yes.
But that is true for any model and any program. So you probably had something specific in mind.
Yes. So
just 1 second. So there was a comment about the AI systems being fooled, and the author of that statement now kind of like the counter argument is that any system basically can be fooled, correct?
yeah. So maybe first,
Can you give an example?
yes. So there were and I don't know, have like a real world example, but there were things that were kind of demonstrated on purpose. So let's say you have a camera in a car that detects traffic signs. And if you know enough about the system, for example, you can kind of generate like a sticker with a very particular pattern, and you put it on the traffic sign, and then this one system fails to detect it as a stop sign. So it's also actually a kind of a robustness issue. And so there it might be a safety issue, or if you have like, I don't know, a credit scoring system, if you know enough about it, and let's say you are denied a credit score, you might be able to find a way to slightly tweak kind of the data you provide for it. That shouldn't make much of a difference, but this one particular system then suddenly actually reverses its decision and kind of gives you the credit score, which from the point of view of the bank would be a problem. But all these issues that I said here, they are kind of not AI specific, but many of them, they tend to be a bit more severe with AI. I think that's maybe my main point, but it's completely true that all these issues that are up today are not exclusive to AI, but to any application actually.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Really, you know, I'm probably the only social sciences student in that. So now to the crux of the bigger problem, kind of like, do we regulate artificial intelligence, and how do we go about it? Over to you, State Secretary from the Ministry of Digital Transformation, Dr. Aida Kamišalić Latifić.
Thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Aida. I'm State Secretary at the Ministry of Digital Transformation. I'm also Assistant Professor at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at the University of Maribor. Whether to regulate or not. Technology per se, not regulating, but we have to deal with the usage of AI and the AI systems. So at the beginning, just
Technology for you.
yeah.
No.
No. Perfect. Okay. So So just to set the scene a little bit, what is within in Slovenia this strategic level of digital transformation. So we have an umbrella strategy for the digital transformation. We have action plan of this strategy, which is renovated every 2 years. What's really important, we have a national program for promoting the development and use of artificial intelligence by 2025. So now we are in the process of extension and renovating this national program until 2030. We have a digital public services strategy 2030, gigabit infrastructure development plan by 2030, and there are two more strategies, one actually program and one strategy in the process of preparation, the quantum technology strategy by 2030 and program for chips and semiconductors technologies by 2030. Just to have a broader overview how we strategically tackle digital transformation. I mentioned national program for promoting development and use of artificial intelligence. So the vision is this one, was this one when it was prepared and adopted in 2021. So to build on 40 plus years of artificial intelligence research in Slovenia to become internationally recognized for ethical, secure AI technologies and their transfer into human-friendly, trustworthy services and products while preserving national cultural identity. I believe it's not changed a lot. So we can still say, okay, this could be also today the vision of the program. Of a national strategy. There were 10 strategic goals established, and I pointed out two of them. Of course, all are really important, and we are working towards towards them. But establishing supportive environment for research, innovation, and deployment of AI, and ensuring an appropriate legal and ethical framework. So I will try to let's say, explain a little bit how we are trying to build this supportive environment. Normally, when we talk about the Slovenian companies, we say not just companies, but we are talking about the competitiveness of our economies. Of course, to have a bigger competitiveness, we need to have more better productivity, and better productivity could be reached with the digital transformation. And of course, AI as a technology is one of those important tools to reach this goal. In Slovenian companies, we have, well, we are above EU average for considering AI usage, so around 21%. We could say, okay, we are positioned very well within the Europe. But when we think about the goal, and the goal by 2030 is to have a 75% of companies using AI, well, we still have a lot of work to do, okay? So when we ask companies why they are not using AI, basically the responses are lack of appropriate expertise, legal implications are not clear, concerns about the data protection, and so on, quality of the data required, and so on. So basically, yeah, we have to tackle these issues. We have to find the solution for those so that the companies will feel free to use the technology and to have enough knowledge to use it and to deploy it within their systems. So when we talk about regulation, this is not something that is widely, I would say, normally when I talk to people, everyone is saying, oh, please don't regulate, you know. And the understanding of what regulation means, you know, it's, of course, I can understand the fear because we tend in some cases to over-regulate. So what we need to find is the right balance, I would say here. Yes, we have to regulate. And normally when you talk to people, they're saying, oh, don't regulate. And then they say, well, I understand we have to regulate. Yeah. So basically, I think that everyone agrees we have to find the right way how to regulate. You know? So that's why I have this, this slide, because for me, Of course, the regulation would be implementation of AI Act, ends here at the end position. But the entire ecosystem, to build the entire ecosystem, is what's important here. So yes, we have to establish some rules, but at the same time, we have to have supporting mechanisms which will help us, actually help companies still be able to innovate, still be able to go through these processes and not stop the development and usage of AI. So yeah, I mentioned National Program for Artificial Intelligence. Hopefully by the end of this year, we will have the new program till 2030 already adopted. The second measure, European Digital Innovation Hubs. It's a EU initiative. It's something that we, I would say, jump on the train with the EU. It's now finishing the first 3-year period. Now they are already accepted also decisions for the next 3-year period. In Slovenia, we have 2 European Digital Innovation Hubs that are dedicated to support SMEs in a digital transformation process. So this is something that is important. What we have learned so far in the past 3-year period, 50% of the it was 50% financed by the European Commission, 25% by the government, and 25% was supposed that companies will invest in the services, whatever products they will get from the hubs. Well, we could see that Slovenian companies, in majority, they were not prepared to invest anything in this. The problem that we see, and some reports are showing, that almost, well, a bit over 50% of Slovenian companies, they don't see any need for digital transformation. And this is preoccupying. Basically, what I think will happen that those companies that are not on board now, in a few years period, they won't exist anymore. They will become companies who will be agile, who will step forward and bring something new into the market. So that's why we have decided to say, okay, we are giving you the last chance to get on board. So in this new 3-year period, the government said, okay, 50% from the European Commission and government will give 50%. So basically free of charge for the SMEs to use all the services from AIS. So then the financial part could not be the obstacle. Because normally when you talk to the companies, they sometimes say, oh yeah, we don't have enough money, to give for these reasons. The next thing, competence center. At the moment, hopefully by November, we will establish the competence center for artificial intelligence, and something that is not financed by European Commission, European Union, but something that is financed by our national funds. And we saw the need to gather all the knowledge, competencies, skills into the one consortia, where all the organizations working in the field and having the experiences in the field are participating in the competence center. AI Factory, Slovenian AI Factory, and new HPC, something that supercomputer, really important. Again, the initiative from European Commission, which we accepted and said, okay, we will give 50% as a government to establish the AI Factory and HPC. Total investment is of 135 million euros. And it was interesting that was mentioned the first presentation. Yeah, it's a supercomputer using a lot of power, environmental issues, and so on. So basically, what we thought there at the moment, it's built the facility for a data center where also supercomputer will be deployed. and it's built in the second largest city of Slovenia, in Maribor, next to the river plant, hydro plant Drava. So we have this greener energy there. And the second part of the project now we are developing that actually the excess heat from the supercomputer will be used to build, will be used for the heating system, and approximately 40% of the heating, what the city of Maribor needs for winter season could be covered by the excess heat of from supercomputer. So basically, this is the second part of this huge project that we will make the whole cycle and use this excess heat for actually to bring something also for our citizens just in every house. And European Digital Infrastructure Consortiums, another mechanism from EU, and there are different consortiums to build a common infrastructure. At the moment, we are participating in the EDIC for blockchain, EDIC for EDIC Cityverse, which is for digital twins for local communities, and the one important also AltEDIC for language technologies and developing large language models for all European languages. And at the moment, we are also preparing the EDIC for digital commons, which I think is also really important to have this talking about the open source, open models, and so on, not depending on the large companies and overseas and so on. So this is also something that is important and is also supported by the government, the membership. We enter there, and then all our stakeholders can participate in the common multi-country projects within the EDICs. And finally, I come to the AI Act, implementation of AI Act, and I have written next to AI Act the sandboxes. This is the mechanism that I find it's important so to go hand in hand. So establishing regulatory sandboxes is something that will help us then continue or boost our innovation, companies to innovate when they have the support from government in this sense. So the rules, because also you have seen that uncertainty about AI, that's what's preoccupied companies. Well, yeah, because we don't know what will be the rules, what will happen. So my idea was, well, we should implement AI Act as soon as possible. At the same time, I'm sure that you have heard that there is a new omnibus coming for all the digital regulation, to go through it and see where we can loosen up and so on. Yeah, at the same time, we can do this, but we should implement AI Act as soon as possible and establish the rules and establish the mechanisms how to cut the costs of compliance for our SMEs. So not to over-regulate and make that impossible for them to use the technology, but actually help them go through the process and use it. AI Act, basically what member states were asked is to designate competent authorities, so notifying authorities and market surveillance authorities, and establish offenses and penalties. And I can say that at the EU level, we have AI board, where we discussed how we should implement it and what should we do. Unfortunately, I thought that it will be a common ground that we will all work in the same direction and finally make something that we could then say, okay, now we have a single market within EU and not each country its own law. That, of course, we have to have our own acts, but we should be all on the same level, let's say. Unfortunately, I could see there that there are now countries which are calling to stop the clock, stop the regulation, not to go into the regulation. Of course, there are also different reasons for that. And there are countries that are saying, well, we should do it. So Slovenia is among those that we are saying, okay, let's do it as soon as possible and establish all the mechanisms that we can help boost our economy. So yeah, as I mentioned, we went through this public consultation, everything, and the adoption, well, the government approved the act on August 21st, and the adoption is planned in the National Assembly, hopefully by the end of October. Yeah, this is not that much of importance for you, which are the notifying authorities, Slovenian accreditation, and so on. What we try to do with market surveillance authorities is actually, we tried to centralize as much as possible within the Agency for Communication Networks and Services of the Republic of Slovenia. Of course, any governmental institution, we all have the same problem, lack of experts in this field, the lack of, you know, in general, in Slovenia or everywhere in EU, we have the lack of experts. Even companies complain that they don't have enough experts and they can pay them quite a different amounts of money than public institution could. So what we said, okay, try to centralize as much as possible within one institution which already has certain technical knowledge and technical stuff, and it will be easier for them to onboard new experts in the field. So mostly you will see on the right-hand side, ARCOS as the agency, and in some cases also Information Commissioner. So we have tried to do this. And other provisions, we have decided to have also Commissioner for AI ethics. At the moment, we are also preparing the amendment for this act, a panel, a board of different experts which could handle this role of commissioner for AI ethics. Yeah, I've mentioned before, what's important are regulatory sandboxes. Also, we are giving the authority of coordinating the establishment of AI regulatory sandboxes to ACOS. Also, they will establish the functional entry point, so help desk for SMEs and general public. What's important about the regulatory sandboxes is that there are different approaches actually, and we can see it from different countries that there are different ways to tackle this issue. What we think is important is actually to bring the companies, of course, to establish the right regulatory sandbox and try to follow them through the entire development process. So basically, the way they develop the solution, at the same time, they will be compliant with the regulations. So at the end, when the solution is developed, basically, they are prepared and compliant with the legislation. So yeah, this is just it. And of course, we have to give some financial support for interdisciplinary innovation projects in the field of AI, and also to support small value application projects for SMEs in the field of AI. So both public calls are planned for the next year. I mentioned these, so I will just skip. I think that I'm tight with the time. So yeah, thank you.
Obviously, the plan now is to open the kind of like the panel discussion, but I wonder, is there any quick intervention at this point? Okay. So I think that was the first hand, that was the second.
Okay, thank you. And the third.
I said one, but I can,
And you
let's see, guys.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. This is all very curious, but one thing I am not hearing, there is a big concern about what will happen with workforce and with people's occupation, and AI rapidly takes over many kinds of functions. So what I do not hear is among all those glorious strategies about trying to make 70% of companies adopt AI, are the strategies that will help people who will lose jobs, who are like medium educated, yes, not very creative, but still doing some kind of education. What are the strategies about helping those people to gain new expertise and keep them relevant and keep them employed?
Yeah, good question. We have probably you are familiar with the micro credentials system that is being developed. No, okay. So basically, the idea is that micro credentials system is you can have, instead of going back to the faculty, university, so to take courses there, you can choose different courses, get it from the different institutions, which could offer you good quality courses, and build your expertise or build enough knowledge so that you can deal with different, let's say, work, different job. What we also think about is using special programs for upskilling, reskilling, and so on. We have already done one project for women in for reskilling women in IT, because we have the problem, of course, in general with ICT professionals. So basically, the next year we are preparing another program. In this case, it won't be limited just for women, but in general, whoever wants to join the program. So this is the way how we tackle at the moment the lack of ICT experts. But you mentioned not this part, but in general, public which is not maybe savvy in the field of IT, and I can see we have well, also again, it's not just a question of our ministry, but within our ministry we have trainings for now already 3 years that are offered for younger, so for children from 6 years old until 28, younger people, and then from 30 to 65, and then we have another from 65 up. So different target groups. So to actually the group from 30 to 65, this is the group that we have to catch somehow and give them enough skills to deal with this. This is the issue also in Slovenia, also in other countries, but in Slovenia we have this problem because there is 47% of Slovenian population has the basic digital skills. So that's why we are trying doing this through the non-formal education part. Of course, within the educational process, there are also some changes going on, but we cannot wait. Yeah, the new generations, they are coming, they will have enough, they will get enough knowledge probably through the school system or through educational system, but we have to catch those who are not, who are outside already of the system. So there are several programs now in the process, some already going on and some in preparation to tackle also this issue.
Follow-up question. So
Can I ask you for slightly later? I'm sure we'll touch the workforce.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify this slightly related to Aida's question. When you said the goal is to have 75 of the companies using AI, is it across all sectors?
Yeah.
Isn't that
One is a number. What?
is it? I mean, bakeries, everything.
Okay.
No, but that sounded a little bit
Yeah.
surprising. And so yes, why that number? Like, what's the rationale behind it? Because it seems like this could also be the incentive for building AI that is pointless. What we were discussing
Yeah, of
before in the
course, it's
previous.
not. It's not a question just of using AI, it's a question of digital transformation, So what I mentioned before, we have over 50% of companies, of SMEs saying we don't need digital transformation, but we don't have 50% of our economy within bakeries and stuff, So we have the issue there, So of course, 75. Basically, we have followed the strategic goals of the EU, So we are trying to be, and they are ambitious goals. And in many cases, we are all aware within EU that we won't be able to reach those goals within 5 years, and they will be adopted, or we will say, okay, we will need 5 more years or whatever, but we should have some kind of ambitious goals, and say, okay, because this is something that could bring us the productivity. Of course, there's another important issue that the other day we also debated. Why are we doing this? To bring the productivity, to give to earn more money, or to give us more free time. Maybe we could say, okay, if we apply all this, we will be able to work 6 hours per day, or 5 or 4.
So it would be nice if these kind of things are baked in.
But this should be the vision, If you say no, we will be working even more, and we're doing more work, but so this is also the debate that we should open and discuss it. What is the final goal? Why are we doing this?
Agree. Do you have?
No, exactly. It was about 75%, like
Right.
how ambitious it is, given other issues. But okay, good.
So I'm sure you're bursting with other questions, and this is for all the speakers. Tina, can I ask you to please invite Katerina back on screen?
Yes.
And Sebastian. I have a million questions myself, but I won't be taking chair prerogative. I think you've listened for too long. So I'll open the floor. Yeah, you just. Do you want to? I think we have to do with the layouts of the room. Katerina, are you with us? Brilliant. I'll sit, and everyone can hear me in the back. Brilliant. Cheers. Feels like on screen, kind of like thumbs up. I'm sure you have questions for either Katerina, who was covering the issue of environmental aspect of responsible AI, and how we as researchers and as well as users can be smarter in how we use, deploy, develop, uptake artificial intelligence, or you have questions and comments for Sebastian, who was talking about trustworthy AI. And can we actually trust AI? Has AI earned its trust? And obviously, I'm sure you still have many more questions for the State Secretary, not just around workforce and the distribution of superstars when it comes to uptake of digital technologies. So over to you. We have about half an hour. Let's spend it wisely. Don't get me asking questions, because you won't get any space afterwards. I promise you that. Any takers? Thank you. Could I just invite you to please introduce yourself? Just tell us who you are.
Sure, yeah. I'm Henry from JC in Germany. I do particle physics. So I was really surprised to hear that there isn't support for lots of regulation on AI. And I was wondering whether the others feel that that's true. Like, particularly, I would have thought in CERN, most people are also worried about private ownership of AI, and they would support regulation, and surely from an ethics standpoint as well. Are there kind of quieter voices who, do you think the community as a whole in academic work, in laboratories, supports regulation?
I assume you have a question for Sebastian, or just anyone?
Anyone, yeah,
Anyone.
any takers.
So do you mind if I take a few more questions? Katerina, you okay? Sorry, you're there. There was a hand raised in the back. Is your memory good enough?
Yes,
Yeah, good.
I will do my best.
Good. Over to you, please.
I coordinate AI for Health Pro, so the healthcare position.
I was wondering, question for State Secretary is whether, when you mentioned 75%, again, going to that number, which is tongue in cheek and way too high, would it be an idea in looking at to identify certain areas, certain domains where you would prioritize AI use as opposed to just getting the digital skills up indiscriminately of AI? Like, are there areas, sectors?
So that was the question about the specificity and where the digitalization and the introduction of AI is going to happen, if I heard you correctly. And there's another hand over there.
Yes, Alex Razim, currently employed by University of Nova Gorica, head of astrophysicist. My question follows up my earlier questions about the workforce and adaptation. So what is the plan of financing programs for reskilling people? Is there any kind of strategy how to direct this financial load to the big AI companies that will obviously benefit the most from the current trends? Or is it going to be like evenly distributed load over all ordinary people paying their taxes?
Thank you. Because time is scarce, can I ask you all to be as succinct and brief as humanly possible in your answers? Should we start with Katerina, because it's been the longest since we heard from you. Katerina, would you feel comfortable enough? I don't know. Sorry, I have to look at the box over there. Would you be comfortable enough to start us with the first question?
Yeah, so I'm happy to. We're domain friends somehow. So I'm also in particle physics, and I think so it depends on what you mean with regulations, because I think one of the things that we all like doing when we write grant proposal or write our research proposals is just say, we have no big concerns, we have no problems, our particles don't have GDPR, we don't need to worry about all of these things. So that's the kind of knee-jerk reaction that everyone has whenever you're thinking about this data. The data that we're using is not necessarily like, it doesn't have any problems. The problem, I think, is in what Sebastian was saying, that we sometimes don't think about all the aspects and the facets of trustworthiness. It's not just about, do your particles have a name and protected characteristics? It's all about how well your algorithm works. And this is something that we care about immensely in our field. There was a comment as well that you have to prove that your algorithm works before publishing it. But it's not always that simple. It's also, is your algorithm also reproducible by others? So I think it's difficult to think about domain-specific regulations. And I'm only talking about the particle physics AI, so the things that you do to follow up on your analysis, to discover new particles or things like that. I'm not talking about the use of large language models, for example, for doing other things. That's also a very important aspect. And so I'm covering the scientific aspect first. I think regulations are coming more or less in the sense of incentives or stick and carrot whenever you apply for funding, or whenever you have to build a data management plan, or whenever you have to write an ethics report. From my experience, I coordinate an ITN, a doctoral network in the EU. And in our initial proposal, we wrote, we don't have any problems with trustworthy AI. And then we were asked to, we were assigned an ethics advisor, and we did a lot of work with them, and it was very interesting work. So I'm kind of a convert of that. So this is actually coming from your funders. That's where the regulation is coming from. So regarding the regulations coming from the use of AI in other aspects of life, because we are using it everywhere as scientists, then maybe this is where I pass the baton to Sebastian. I have some more opinions, but I would also like to hear from someone else.
It's just one short comment. So not so much on the science, but on my experience from working with small companies. Like I developed kind of some proof of concept for small companies, is that there is actually a lot of support for regulation, because they see it a bit as a setting point. And maybe like what we said in terms of big unregulated things, the EU cannot compete anyway. And it comes from the US, it might come from China, but they more see, okay, but what can we do? Like really focus on this, okay, we have like trustworthy applications, and then you come to this big issue, but what does it mean? And this is much easier if there is actually regulation that you can refer to. So I feel there is actually a lot of support for regulation. But again, this was like from very small companies who kind of need to find a niche. I do not know how it is with the larger.
Oh, you mean like the way that DeepL was very successful because we needed a translation program that didn't have the issues that Google Translate had?
Yes, that's one example. Also, if it comes to data protection or all kinds of other things. So if you're a European company, then it's very hard to compete at the moment because a lot of stuff comes from the US. But I think it is some C regulation is a point, the way out of it. But it will work. I don't know, and I don't have a strong opinion. But
I think that also the attitude is a bit changing. You know, you're saying, yeah, there are big companies from all over the world, but in the EU, I guess we have figured out what sovereignty means, and what it means in this geopolitical crazy situation. So I think that there are so many initiatives and everything going on. Okay, EU companies, EU-based companies, EU products, services, and so on. So there is a lot of support. So that companies actually get on board, and yeah, we are not going to compete in the fields that it's already lost the competition there. But there are fields where we can be good, and there where we can offer the products that are trustworthy and everything that you have mentioned before, and this is the something that we should build on, and the European companies should do in this direction, and position in general Europe in the world as the one that is building the solutions in this way. So
we can come back to the issue of regulation because I know it's a bursting issue also for me personally, but could we perhaps just answer the distribution question?
Yeah, it was the question, which priorities within the national program, we have certain priorities. So the health medical sector is one of the priorities. As I mentioned, national preservation of national cultural heritage. So language technologies is another, digital service industry, so planning, spatial planning, and so on, So actually within Slovenia, we have detected, well, the priorities are where we can see that the data is ready, that we are, that we have the infrastructure. And here, I mean, not just infrastructure as servers and so on, but infrastructure as data and so on, so that we can build the solutions upon this.
Could I just intervene here? Could you perhaps, for the audience, explain, because the political terms and offices change, and so usually do priorities. How should we, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence, new technologies, maintain and keep continuity, also when it comes to priorities? So just for the context, in case you don't know, it's a kind of like a left-center government at this point. There's national elections coming up next year. It could be a complete overturn. It could be, kind of like as elsewhere, could be a turn to the right or to the extreme left, who knows? So I wonder, in terms of continuity, how do we ensure, because the industry, the environment requires predictability, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. That's why the national program for artificial intelligence, basically, it was prepared, the first one in the year, it was adopted in the year 21, when it was prepared during the central left government, and then it was adopted within the right government, and we are following certain steps and working on it, which is left center government. So hopefully this will continue, and we will have this broader, let's say, agreement, because I think there are a lot of ideological things going on within the politics in general. But one thing that is not ideology is the technology, and I shouldn't be, shouldn't be in that sense. It could be used for wrong reasons and so on. That's why also the regulation is important. But I think that the digitalization per se and so on, these aspects should be, stable and not something that would be changing considering different governments. Hopefully, so far I haven't heard, yeah, I know that it could be different ideas and so on, but I haven't heard any politician, from different parties saying, no, we don't need national program. That's if we come to if we will win the elections, we will change it totally. We won't follow these measures. We want, because we are pursuing some goals that are not ideological. We want our companies to do well. We want our companies to have a higher productivity. We can help them with the deployment of the technology. So I think this is something, hopefully, that will stay out of the question in this sense.
The party politics.
Yeah.
And now over to the workforce question.
Yeah, workforce. So far, we don't have a specific strategy. It was not built as a strategy at the level of a government. But I think that it's important to think cross-sectoral about this, and because so far Ministry for Workforce is doing some programs and doing some measures, preparing some measures, and we are doing some part, and then there are parts from education and so on. So I think that in this case is something that we should also merge all these ideas and build the as a whole, the approach, so that we know what will happen in this sense.
Gabby, do we have any questions from the online group? Not yet. Okay, so we'll stay in the room. There's a question over there and over there. Go ahead. Yes, please.
I remember currently employing in the University of Ljubljana under the SMASH program and currently working in the security of the AI integrated system. My comment is that any transformation needs workforce, and the kind of digital transformation we are talking about here needs and global talent or like global workforce. You want to invite here in Slovenia. But what are your plans to ease the visa process or something like this? Because all the countries who are going through such transformation have eased the visa process to a very low level for the scientists working specifically in the field of artificial intelligence. So what are the government plans in this regard?
Yeah, that's.
Can I just ease your question within a similar theme topic? No. Okay, so do you mind? And then I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Very important question, a very important issue. We are at the moment working, because you'll understand that legislation is quite dispersed, in this field. So we need like 6 different ministries that are responsible for different parts, and that they have to change different parts within their laws. What we have done, because the process of receiving the visa is so long, and not just the visa, but the permanent residence and so on, we have found that also some parts, even though we should make the digital transformation of this process, we have decided to speed up the process, to just digitalize some parts, because in some cases they were saying, yeah, we have done our part, but then it lasted like 3 weeks, so that another governmental institution would receive this data and do the processing and so on. So what we are doing now is developing the process which will support foreign those issues, so that the process, instead of taking in some cases 9 months, 7 months, and so on, would take, say, 3 months. Even though this is too long time, but at least at the technical level, do as much as possible. At the same time, we are now preparing, let's say, Slovenian omnibus on different issues that we can see, where the president of the government also said, okay, so this issue is important, so all ministries, that you have to do it, and it's a bit different process than if Ministry for Digital Transformation would come and say, okay, we need to do it, so you have to pursue every single person there, that they have to change something within their law or whatever, So we are in the process. We know what are the problems. We are aware of this. So hopefully we will manage to do it as soon as possible.
I think this is a crucial question, because I think Slovenia is a tiny European countries actually losing global talent to bigger countries with, but let me kind of give you a silver lining. The United Kingdom is equally bad, if not worse. So I think, kind of like that helps Slovenia to a bit, to get a bit of that kind of jazzy talent from the global south or elsewhere, wherever, we are deemed competitive.
Welcome to that, before you change the topic.
Right, go.
UK is maybe bad, and it's going back to what it's been 15 years ago. But what they have is prioritizing highly skilled workforce as opposed to general. So they're trying to digitalize everything. But if you come in as a highly skilled worker that is a particular demand, then you go through an expedited system, which is only done in a sense that they have separate people who are literally taking them and guiding them through the system, which at that point cannot be fully digitalized. So they had this for the last 20 years.
When you say they?
UK.
Well,
Okay, we all have personal stories.
Let's discuss it off air once we stop recording it. Go ahead.
I have two questions, one for each of the speakers. Yeah. My name is Nina Berczak. I'm a full professor of law, also a scientific director of the Institute of Criminal Ethics and Criminology, and at the University of Ljubljana, I'm a specialist consultant for research ethics and integrity, having a newly established unit on that. And my question for you, Sebastian, is I understand, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that you distilled these 6 requirements from the literature review that you did.
Yes.
And they overlap almost verbatim with the, well, one is missing, from the 7 requirements of the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, developed in 2019 by high-level expert group on AI. So I was wondering, because I didn't see much referencing to that document, do you find that document has an additional requirement, societal, environmental well-being? Do you find it from the literature that something is missing from the existing kind of EU guidelines on that? First question, or should I ask directly a second one? Okay. And my another question is, I've been wondering, because I also participated online in your survey as part of a public consultation. I've also registered for the national kind of consultation in Brno, but unfortunately wasn't invited, possibly also due to my fault, and we were quite late in getting the approval to apply. So unfortunately, I could not participate in the ethics panel that you had. But one of the concerns that I had in the survey was also, and probably relates to some of the things that have been mentioned already, how do you plan to address those segments? And they're not just kind of, old and elderly who don't, for example, even have digital certificates to access public sort of institutions and fill out forms and so forth. But also young people who shun away from, AI, go back to Nokia and that sort of thing. Are you developing a parallel system or a universe in which people can still apply in a normal way, have a parallel system for those who are digitally aware and want to use all those, but also not to exclude those who refuse or cannot or do not want to learn and still, have this regular mechanism of just phoning up or submitting in person or something like that. I think that was just one of the concerns. And the others.
That's a good question on inclusion as well, and exclusion and analog versus digital. Are there any further questions in the room? Yes. I'll take the third one and then I'll return to you.
As a side note, I'm also curious about your question because I don't have the social humanity. So I'm curious, I think you should ask your questions more. Because I don't know, it's a different perspective, right? I just wanted to go back to what you were saying, the state secretary, was saying about this whole question of why do we want to do this 75% or like this digital transformation. And I'm curious about, is Slovenia as a country explicitly writing down why they want to do this and what are the change they want to see in society? Because this, I think, is definitely political. And is it different from the EU? Is the EU also like phrasing explicitly why they want to do this kind of like, which I'm not want to be offending, but when you were talking about this digital transformation, it sounded like a forced transformation, like you will change. And that sounded kind of off. And I'm also curious about the the perspective of the two other speakers on this, on this dynamic on digital transformation and the role of AI.
Katerina, do you hear? Yeah, good. Okay. So, State Secretary, over to you, and then I'll go to the initial question, and then we'll return to the. Well, okay.
Maybe I will try to answer the first question because it should also be short. So, it's true. So these 6 requirements I presented here were based on the literature, including the document that you mentioned. And I think your main question was whether we found kind of any like missing requirements.
Yeah, but the literature pointed out something that is missing in the guidelines that would need to be improved.
No, actually not. I think maybe the kind of the overarching requirements are quite clear, but what is more the open is like if you then really dig down and try to define things a bit more specifically, it starts to get a bit more tricky, and also how to what to do to actually conform to the requirement. But I think on a high level, that by now it's actually clear and kind of reached the level where it's relatively easy to talk about it. But then making the link, I don't know, to the persons who actually develop an AI system, I think this is not yet fully developed, and it's also very, very difficult task.
The question, yeah, it was in our case, we are following the let's say the rule motivation digital first, but not digital only. So basically, always there will be some analog way of doing things for the people who doesn't want to do it or is not savvy or whatever. But definitely we are trying to do digital first, to change some processes and change, so that people, we have so many digital public services, which are actually prepared, they are there, but awareness of the existence of those, of course, we never did the marketing part, so it was developed technically, it's there, but people are not using it.
Or they're trying to, but they have Macs and then they fail. Just my personal.
Yeah, it depends. That's why we have the goal within the ministry, to see what are the reasons, what's happening, whether people are not aware of it or people have tried to use it and it's not user friendly enough or whatever, and to tackle these problems, and go step by step, change this so that we can talk about digital first, so use the digital service, use the digital part before and think first of this instead of going for some to some office and doing it doing the paperwork, So this is the idea, but not the digital only, not definitely. And it was
forced digitalization.
The forced digitalization. It may be because it's my technical ground is maybe coming out here, my technical background, So I know what could mean, for the companies to be on board, what can mean for any system, universities to have digitalized processes, and how easier it could be for everyone at the university if everything is digitalized and so on, So I come from this perspective, that's why maybe it seems like someone will force doing this, but it's not meant like this. We have prepared the measures, we have prepared the financing also, but every single company or every single user can decide, So what was important for us, because we are talking about competitiveness, and at EU level, we talk a lot about competitiveness, competitiveness of our economy, So how to raise this part, So this is one way of doing it. So if we can have better companies, if we can, we can also support all the social programs and social parts that are important for our governments. Some governments are maybe not that important, But yeah, this could be then change in the sense what you use, the financial, the money that you have, the budget that you have, then how you use it for other services, But for us, it's important to have the public services, you know, whether from education for whatever we are talking here, you know, and you need enough finances to support all of these, you know. So that's why you need also strong economy to finance. But it's not meant, you know, it will be obligatory. It's not obligatory. Everyone can decide. You know, we have the free trainings. You know, we can offer it. It's free of charge for every single citizen. It's your decision whether you want to learn more, whether you want to obtain some new skills. Yeah, we are trying to open, you know, and to bring this to everyone, you know, so that they are aware that this is important. You have to be on board, you know, you have to have these skills. If not, if nothing else, just because of the usage of the technology, to understand what's happening behind, you know, what kind of service or what kind of product you are using that have those kind of algorithms or whatever, you know. So we have done this part, you know, it's free of charge for everyone. The question is now if you recognize this or you use it, you know, as a service.
Thank you. Katerina? There
Yeah,
was
so,
one. Yeah.
I wanted to link in with the question about upskilling, so how to train, and is the training sufficient? So from the perspective of people doing sciences and working at universities, one of the, I think, the biggest added value to society that we give is not just physics, it's all other like fields. We produce students or graduate students that are then going into society. Not a lot of people stay in academia. So we really have to think about how we're training those people in AI and what message we're passing over there, because everyone wants to do AI projects. Everyone wants to do AI courses. So we're teaching them the theoretical basis. Maybe we're teaching, depending on the field, we're teaching a lot of hands-on how to use AI. But I strongly support inclusion in the curriculum of trustworthy AI topics as well, because I think that is going to give a head start to people that are going to society and then think about, I think I might have, oh no, the room is okay, still there. Sorry, I thought I'd lost the room. I think it's going to give people a head start in trying to understand the issues around the use of AI. And maybe we're not doing that enough. Of course, the curriculum is very short. You can't really give everything to everyone. You can't teach everything to everyone. But at least the inclusion of some elements to understand how to have a responsible use of AI in the curriculum, I think would be good. And this could have a positive effect downstream in society when the next generation of politicians grow up from these students. So
I think we've just been reminded that we, you know, all the conversation, everything we do is situated in a built environment, and we've just been attacked by a wasp in the room. So be mindful and careful of that. But I'm also aware of the time, and it's also Friday. Are there any last questions from the room? Yeah, I mean, I don't mind keep going. It's just kind of, I am aware of the time. I'll give the floor to the colleague and then to you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I guess what I'm wondering is that when we're talking about responsible AI and green AI, there is a lot of discussion on the both ecological and human costs of mining rare earth minerals. And I'm just wondering, as you know, AI is becoming a bigger consumer of those goods. Should governments who are pushing for AI initiatives, but also researchers, be pressuring MNCs to change the way in which this is done?
Would you like to take it?
Sure, I'll take it, but then I'll also ask from the government's perspective because I'm interested in that. I think what we're trying to do is, at least the people working on this in the field, it's not a lot of people because it's still seen as you're not going to produce better models or models with a better performance if you think of this. So it's trying to make people think that not more is better, but that less is better. So we're trying to hook the conversation into, you also want this, you also want AI to reduce the consumption. It's energy consumption, because this gives benefits to your science. So that's the perspective we're adopting at the moment. we know that there will be regulations coming in. I mean, I think, or not necessarily regulations, but policies, or at least soft policy constraints that will start thinking about that. But I think the motivation at the moment, it's harder to convince people to do that for the sake of something that will come, or if people are more concerned about getting the next job, you can't tell them now you have to work on this aspect as well, because what they want is a paper on the next possible best model or the best possible result with the model they got. So if we're trying to find intrinsic motivations for doing this, and then we're also talking to policymakers, at least this is what's happening. So I don't think it's a top-down approach. It's possibly more a bottom-up approach, trying to see what works and trying to avoid telling people you must not do this or you must do this, because that's going to be considered as it's not going to work as a potentially even as a policy, because people will not want to do it. So why should they do it?
Do you mind if I take the last question? We'll see what it is, and then we'll.
Sorry, actually, it's quite related. I don't know, you might have read it, the study measuring the impact of early 2025 AI on experienced open source developer productivity. It was by the Model Evaluation and Threat Research. And basically, they did this study for the benefit of everybody else, that people using LLMs who are very familiar with the code base they're working on, they think they're faster, but they're actually about 20% slower on average. So you burn a lot of carbon, and it takes you longer to finish the job. So is that something maybe we could teach people when to use AI and when not to use AI, when to leave it alone? I'm asking you mostly because I'm aware that CERN has its own large language model and is very familiar with the use of it.
So I don't know if you want me to go. Yeah. Yeah, so I think, CERN is not necessarily having its own large language model for doing these kind of things. It's more about the knowledge preservation of what is in CERN and knowledge distribution of what is in CERN. That's what it's used for. So you have a lot of people doing a lot of things, maybe not being the greatest at documenting because there's not a lot of incentives. So the main goal as well is to get, at the moment for the models that are being developed, is centrally at CERN, is to just get this sorted. So it's not about getting people to code faster or better, because I think we're all getting to that point. We don't want to have to deal, maybe a hallucination happens once in every 100 times that you use code, but how do you know? And I think the main problem is that if we don't teach students the basics, then we'll never be able to distinguish what a hallucination is. And then, so this is what I think we should try to be doing with the people that we're working with, saying, okay, it's useful. It can be an accelerator of your time, but use it carefully and wisely and know what you're doing. You don't grow an AI, at least at the moment. I think the biggest problem with the LLMs is that they don't gain a lot of experience. I mean, they learn fast, but they learn superficially. The deep stuff, that's not coming. And if you are using an LLM right now for doing the work of a junior developer, sure, maybe you can save some money, but you're never going to be able to train that junior LLM developer to become an expert LLM developer. That growth is not going to happen. So it's a short-term investment. But yeah, I have strong opinions about that kind of stuff. So maybe we should hear from someone else.
I think everyone in the room does have a very strong opinion on that, but I am aware of the time. I think we are all getting tired. It's a dark room and it's Friday. Kind of like even the developers need some leisure time. Gabriela, do we have any last comments, any questions from the audience online? Okay, so on that note, thank you to our speaker, Serena, Sebastian, Aida. Thank you so much. Thank you also to everyone in the room and online for your patience, and also for very friendly conversation. I am enthusiastic about seeing data scientists, should I call it like that? Data scientists having all these various conversations. Last, thank you goes to Smash, to Gabriela for kind of sparking this idea, and I can organize this, and I'll be seeing you around, and to everyone whom I own an ethical decision, it's coming. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the great sharing as well.